I can't hear you, Rabbi Green. I cannot hear you. Take off the mute. Still muted.
In memory of her grandmother, Rachel Batzvi, by Sandy and Sid Goldschmidt. In memory of her father, Moshe Ben Simcha, by Judah Klein. In memory of his mother, Sprinza Bas Avraham. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafir, Velti Yashir, Hashem Lataliah, and L'chol B'nai Israel, a good Gaben Shtiar. Okay. Okay, I'll have to check with the office again what the problem is. Okay. Okay, on the bottom, I want to pick up, if you will join me on Nun Aleph Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Okay. Right, that's where we left off. And this is a whole separate issue. But since they were talking about the issue of a missing limb, okay, on a person, the discussion in the Gemara sort of, or in the base Midrash, whatever it was, sort of went to a somewhat different direction. Okay.
So it's connected because that for
It's in part. I think it's more the question of the chaser, the missing component. Okay.
It's concerned. It's in the limb now.
No, it's why? Because what? Oh, I'm sure. Okay, and remember we said that it said 3 things. Remember, one of which was teeth, did not cause tumor. Okay. All right, because he was a dentist, that's what. Okay. All right.
In history, nobody had teeth less than about 40.
Okay, so at the bottom of, all right, Nun Aleph Amud Beis. You'll ask George Washington that question. Okay. All right. So, right. By Rava. So Rava asks the following. Okay. And we're talking about a situation where one may have eaten an ant, okay, that was missing a limb. Nimala shechasera. Okay, it's like the old joke, you bite into the apple and you find half a worm. Okay. All right. Okay. Mahu, what's the situation? Shira gemiran la v'hachaser. Are we talking about the fact that we have a specific tradition that we've learned about a minimum shir? Okay, and now we're saying that this is only part of a creature, implying that only when the creature is there in its entirety. Okay, and well, we'll get to that in a second. Only when the creature is there in its entirety is there a problem, but not otherwise.
It's missing the shear that's
Okay,
needed.
well, that's what we're going to get to. Okay, that's what we're going to get to. All right, v'hachaser, and therefore it's missing. Okay, all right. So what happens? It doesn't fulfill the minimum requirement of the shear. Iberia gamirele. Okay, and therefore, if we learned that it had to be the entire item, the entire insect, well, we didn't get there yet. We didn't get there yet. Yes, but we didn't get there yet. Hold on. Don't jump ahead, please. Okay? Biria gemirala. Okay, if we say it's the whole item, the whole animal, okay, and therefore vaha'ika, and we have it here because the animal is alive, and therefore it's the whole animal. That's why I say let's not jump the gun so quick. All right? Amar Rav Yehuda midiskarta. So Rav Yehuda midiskarta raised the following point. Tashma. What about the following braita? It says in the verse text, Bahem, whoever touches with them or in them. Okay? Yachol bekulan. All right, he says it could be, all right, all of them. Okay? Talmud lomar mayhem. But in other words, the text otherwise could have said from them. Right? I mayhem yachol miktsatan. Okay. In other words, had the text said mayhem, then we would have had a clear answer that even if it was part of the animal was there, then there would be a problem. Okay? Talmud lomar bahem, but the text says bahem. Ha-ketzad, what are we talking about then? Ad sheyiga b'miktsatan shahu kekulan. Okay? Until he has contact with part of it, that is like the entire thing. V'shiaro chachamim b'ka'adasha. And the sages determined that the shiur should be the size of an adasha, okay, which we're going to call, let's call it a lentil for the moment, okay? Shekain hachumet tchilat briato b'ka'adasha, because we take the example of a certain kind of sheretz, all right, that it was a kind of lizard, all right?
Let's go close to this. window.
I know, okay, but the Koran didn't, all right? So it was a kind of animal, okay, that in its initial conceptual form, it's the size of a lentil. Tchilat briato b'ka'adasha. Shma mina, and we learn from this, shura gemirela, and we learn from this that this was going to be the measurement, okay, the issue. Amar Rav Shemaya. And so Rav Shemaya comes forward and says, Ki ba'inan shiura. When it was required that we have, at what point do we require then that it be the shiur? Dibidelo havya ke'adasha. It was when a situation when it did not reach that size of a lentil. Okay, and we therefore didn't have that minimum shiur. Lo metame, de lo nafla ba neshama. Okay, we say that it doesn't render tuma. Why? Because there is no life essence. I use that phrase. Okay, in it. Aval nafla ba neshama. But if there is life essence in this item, lo tebayelach, you don't even have to raise the question. Okay, it shouldn't even be an issue. Okay, all right. In other words, once we have, if it's a living animal and we have the shear, okay, then it's considered biria be'afnei atmo as the, okay, and therefore that's the point.
Sheretz is missing a limb. It doesn't contaminate, dead or alive.
No.
No, it doesn't say that.
Cut the tail of a lizard.
It doesn't say that. It said they were taking the, okay, right? If you look at the little geckos that run around here, okay, even if that were to lose its tail, okay, it's still bigger than a lentil, right? Oh, you've had experience with that? Okay, all right. Okay, now we come back to the discussion in our Mishnah. Okay, when we're talking about the fact that our Mishnah at some point towards the, right?
That's correct.
Right. Okay, so the Gemara now is going to look at the fact that Our phrase is hashidra v'hagogolet. And I just want to quickly point out that the use of the vav there is problematic. Okay? On the one hand, it could mean or. On the other hand, it could mean and. Okay? And that's going to be part of the essential discussion that the Gemara wants to try to clarify. Okay? So as we go into the text, Ibayalahu. So they asked them, Shidra v'gugoletnan. Okay, are we talking about the skull or the backbone and the skull together? Tanan, is that what our Mishnah is teaching? O Dilma, or perhaps O Shidra, O Gugolet. In other words, the use of or. Okay, the backbone or the right or the skull. Okay, Amar Rava, says Rava Tashma. He tries to suggest that the following Braita might give an answer. Okay, Shidra Shagired Rov Ilain. Okay, we have a situation where we have the backbone, okay, spinal column, but it has ribs that have been severed. Okay, what's the situation? All right. Shigira rov ila ashaba, that the majority of the ribs have been severed with it. Tehora, we consider that tahor. Okay? It does not result into ubekever, when, however, okay, we're talking about these being buried already in the grave, these severed ribs along with the spinal column, okay, right? Afilu mishuberet o mifureket, even if it is broken or separated, tme'ah mepnei hakever. Okay, it is rendered tame because they are, in a sense, the kever almost binds them or brings them together. If you're using Art Scroll, make sure you put a little mark on 52A2, note number 12 in this case, okay? To go back and 52A2, note number 12, okay? That's the, circle that and look it up afterwards. It gives the explanation why the kever implies that. Ta'ama, why it's the reasoning? Mishum de gered, right? Right? Because they, in a sense,
Whereas the whole.
because, well, in other words, what is the situation when we say that when these ribs are severed, it's not tamei, but we're saying inside the grave, okay, they basically collect them, they bring them together. The gered, they're separated. Lo gered, when they're not separated, tamei, then it renders a tamei. Shmamina, okay, we might learn from this Braita, and notice I say might, Shmamina, O Shadra, O Gugolet, that therefore we need to understand it with or, Katani, and that's what it's teaching. Excuse me. Ha, lo Katani, but the word but here is not ta. Ha kamashmala comes to teach us the chigired, that when it is, I'll call it word severed or separated, tahora, okay, idach, and therefore the other situation, all right, tibai lach, that's when you have your question and the problem, the issue. Tashma, if that's the case, let's try a different Braita. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says as follows: Shisha dvarim, Rabbi Akiva metame, v'chachamim metaharim. Okay, there were 6 items in which Rabbi Akiva rendered the situation, recognizing it as producing tuma, but the sages did not and disagreed with him. V'chazar bo Rabbi Akiva, and ultimately Rabbi Akiva changed his perspective. Okay? So the Gemara goes on. Uma'aseh shehiviu kupa mle'a atzamot lebeit haKnesset shel Tarsiyim. Okay, there once was a situation, a real actual incident, where they brought a container, a basket, for a moment, full of bones to the synagogue of the coppersmiths. Okay, v'hinichuha ba'avir, and they left it open. Okay. V'nichnas todos harofei v'chol harofim imo, and Todos, the doctor, and other doctors went in to examine the bones. Right? Va'amru, and they said, Ein kan shidra mimet echad, that these bones are not from a single backbone, a single spinal column. Okay? So in other words, the implication was they weren't from the same person, a single person, and as a result, then, what would we say? The implication would be that it would not render tumor. Okay? Ta'ama deleka shidra demechada. The reason being that the bones for the spinal column were not from a single person. Okay? Ha'ika, and I'm going to phrase ha'ika is, but if there were, okay, then o shidra o gugolet demichada, were it such that it was the skull or the backbone, the spinal column, okay, of a single person, what would happen then? Nazir megaleach aleha. Then a Nazirite would become tameh, and he would have to go through the appropriate purification. Shmamina, maybe from this scenario, this situation, we could learn O Shidra O Gugolet Tanan. That here again, understanding our Mishnah, it would be the or example, skull or spine. Okay. So the Gemara goes on. Loma ba'e kama. No, this was being presented in the literary style of a loma ba'e. That's what we're talking about. Namely, loma ba'e shidra v'gulgolet, the mimet echad leka. Okay, we do not have to say that when it is the spinal column and I'm going to use and here, and the skull of a single corpse, okay, then that's not the case. We don't have to even ask that question, whether or not it's going to force the tumor, right? Ela afilu, even, o shidra mimet echad, but rather, if it's from the spinal column of a single corpse, o gugolet mimet echad, or the skull of a single corpse, leka. We don't have that either. Tashma, and therefore let's try the following brighter. So we still have not answered the question, is it and or is it or? Okay. Tashma, listen to the following brighter. Mi minyana. Maybe we would determine it based on the total number of the bones. Okay.
Keeping the column with 6.
Right. We're going to get to that in a second. Okay. We're going to get to that in a second, right? From the number. Yeah, I understand. Okay. All right. Mi minyana, from the number. Okay. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the specific number of arguments between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim? Okay. Is that what it is? Umahen, and so the Gemara asks when we say from the number. Okay. That's why I said when could have thought, I might have thought it was the number of bones. No, that's not the point. We're dealing with the number of arguments, and we're going to examine each of those arguments in just a moment. Umahen shisha dvarim, sherabi Akiva mitame v'chachamim taharim. So what then are the 6 items that they disagree on? Okay. Al-Aver min hamet, sheba mishnei metim. One example, okay, on a limb from a corpse that came from two corpses. In other words, they reconstructed the limb from two corpses. Second possibility, va'al aver min hachai shaba mishnei b'nei adam. Okay, a living person's limb that has been reconstructed from two people. Third, what? It's a person who's alive, and they attach, like Frankenstein, so to speak, almost. And as you attach, you have a living person, and you attach.
One person, half of them off from one.
Right, that's what it is.
Anything. There's a basket or there's a box. And there is the tibula, the lower part of a leg from short. And they have the thigh bone from a breast.
And they put them together. Okay. It's sumo. What?
His limbs from is still right.
Right. Okay. I'll come back to that. I don't know if that was the case. Okay, next example. Va'al revi'it dam haba mishnayim. Again. Sorry. It is I skipped one? Okay, sorry. Va'al chatzi kav atzamot shaba mishnei meitim. Okay, so it's a half a kav of bones in a container, okay, that comes from two corpses. Okay. Va'al revi'it dam haba mishnayim. And on a revi'is dam, the quarter log of dam, comes from two. Va'al etzem kisa'ora. And the next example is on a bone that was the size of a barley corn, and that bone was split. Shenechlak l'shnayim, was cut into. Okay, right? Vahashidra, vahagolgolet. And then we get to the example of the skull and the spinal column. And again, question of and or. Okay. And if you're going to think, oh Shidra, oh Google, let's thank you very much. And if we're going to think that we need to read our Mishnah, that it was one or the other, okay? Hani Shiv'ah Havya. Then, as a result, we would not get 6 examples of machloket. Instead, we would have 7. So therefore, if that's the case, if you do want to argue that Shidra and the Golgolet was one, then that would mean that we would need to remove one of the other examples. If so, which one? So let's go on. So, Kikatani. Okay, when we teach this, we have a mnemonic device. Siman Yachid Shahu Gilech Ve'echad. Okay? Now, that's just to help us remember what the examples are. Right? First case. Kol Hechad Aplige Alei Rabin. Okay? Maybe we're going to argue that when we come to the number 6, we're focusing on the situation where it is an example of an achloket between Rabbi Akiva and multiple colleagues. Okay? That's the la'afuke etzem kise'orat, right? To exclude the example of the bone being the size of
Broken bone.
Okay, of that single bone being the size of a barley corn, where the yachid hu, the poligale, where that was only an argument between Rabbi Akiva and a single colleague. Okay? The time, as we learned in a Braita, etzem kise'orat shenechalak l'shnayim. When you have a bone, that's a small bone that was split in half to 2, Rabbi Akiva metame. Rabbi Akiva would hold that it renders tome. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri metaher, that it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, a single colleague,
that disagree with him as opposed to multiple cars. So maybe that's the reason that we get the number 6. Okay? That's first case. Now we'll try, so that would exclude, okay? Next example. The e-bayat ema, and if you want, I might say as follows. Ki katani, when it taught Aver min hamate, okay, the limb from a corpse. Aver min achai lo katani. That example of a limb from a living person. That was not what was taught. Ve'ebayat ema, right? Because you could have, right? You could learn that, okay, from
Not the two cases, it's only one.
the Ibayat Ema, and if you want, I might say as follows. Kikatani, when it's a teacher, Kohecha, Dinazir Megaleach al Ahelo. That is all, that we're talking about situations where the Nazir must shave because it's a question of forming a tent situation. That's the case. La'afuke etzem kise'ora, the love, which excludes the example of the small bone, right, that was the size of the body.
That's only mathematics.
Not matama ba'al,
That
but
is
only.
not matame ba'ol.
But it is mathematics.
That's a separate situation, but right? But the Gemara is simply telling us that's not included in an example, maybe because it's not matame oh. The Bayat Ema, and if you want, I would say as follows. Kikatan, when he teaches it, Kol Heka Dahadarbe, okay? That was taking those examples where Rabbi Akiva recanted, okay? La'afuke Idam, the Lo Hadarbe, with the exclusion then of that one example of the Revi'is Dam, that measurement of blood, where he did not recant on that issue. Right? Why do we know that? The Amar le Rabbi the Bar Kapara, as was told by Rebbe to Bar Kapara, Lo Tishneh Revi'it Dam B'Chazara. Okay, don't teach the example of Revi'it Dam, okay, as part of the recanting. Why? Shaharei limudo shel Rabbi Akiva biyado. In other words, in that phrase, that Rabbi Akiva normally, on a regular basis, would teaching that example was going to be tummy. Okay? That's the thing. And furthermore, says Hamikra Messiah. Okay, we have actually a text, Torah text, that might support that point. Why? We have the pasuk, the Al Kol Nafshot Meit Lo Yavo. Okay, in that particular case, right? Rabbi Shimon Omer, okay, so according to Rabbi Shimon.
The word nafshais is plural.
Right.
So it combines that the blood is mitzare.
That was the point that they had the example Nafshot, that where it said that was the Rabbi Akiva's drasha. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Omer, he says, Ad Yamav Hayam Mitameh. Okay? In other words, he continued throughout his life. Rabbi Akiva maintained the view that in that situation, okay, that renders
The blood is mitzare.
Right? Im Mishemei Chazarvo, if before he died.
No.
After he
While
died.
he's
Mishai.
dead.
Mishai.
Yeah, after he died.
Not right.
Okay, did he recanted it in the Yodeh?
He came to and then
So that, the fact that he said that was a statement of disrespect to his teacher. And that's why the Gemara is going to go on and tell us as follows.
I'm sorry, whose comment was this?
It's Rabbi Shimon. Okay?
Thank you.
In other words, I don't know if after he died that he recanted.
had a dream. Somebody came to somebody in a dream and recanted.
Well, whatever. Okay, so what happened? All right, so the Gemara comes back and tells us, Tana, it was taught, Hushcharu Sheinav, that Rabbi Shimon's teeth became blackened from fasting as result of his showing disrespect to his teacher, Rabbi Akiva, by that kind of a statement. Okay? Sheinav mipnei ta'anot. Let's go on. All right. Tashma. Tanya, as we taught in the following verse. Beit Shammai Omri, according to Beit Shammai. Rova Asamo. Okay, the quarter card of bones that we say would be such that, oh hell, it would be rendering it tongue. Right? Min ha'atam. Oh, right? Oh mishnai. Oh mishlosha. Okay. So what happens? Okay, could be quarter cup, could be two, could be three. Ubeit Hillel only, rova min ha'gavaya. That it's the majority of the body. Merov ha'binyan, or merov ha'minyan. Okay, either the majority of the skeletal structure, okay, or the majority of the number of bones. Amar Rabbi Yoshua, says Rabbi Yoshua, Echalani la'asod, divrei Beit Shammai and divrei Beit Hillel ke'echad. Rabbi Yoshua claims that I can come up with a pshat, an explanation that shows that in this case, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are not arguing, okay? But they really have the same intent. Shebeit Shammai omrim, mishnayim o mishlosha. When they say two or three, in other words, bones, what are we talking about? O mishnei shukiim v'yerech echad. Maybe I'm talking, for example, like two ankle bones and one thigh bone.
Two thighs and two
thighs
femurs
and one ankle.
and a femur.
I will see. Oh, Mishnei Yerachayim, V'shok Echad. Or maybe there I'm talking about two ankles.
Two femurs, not ankles.
Two feet.
Shin bones.
This is shin bones, yeah.
One shin bone and two ankles?
No, one
One?
thigh and two shin bones, or two thighs and one shin bone. The assumption being that the totality of the length of a leg
Yeah, we'll get to
is
that. in a
equal to
second.
51% of the height of a person.
We'll get to that, hold on. I want to go back and look at that.
If it's an ankle, you're not gonna get enough height.
bones and one thigh,
Yeah.
thigh bone. Then it says,
Two thighs and a
and
shin
one
bone.
ankle. All right. Okay. Varov gova o shel adam migova. Since we're saying that those particular bones support the majority height of a person. Okay? That's what we're saying. Beit Hillel omrim, but Beit Hillel says as follows: Min agovia, from the body, or mirov banyan, or from the majority of the skeleton structure, or mirov minyan, or from the majority of the number of bones. For il b'yeshnan, from the farkei yadayim v'raglayim. Why? Because we also say that there are other bones, okay, that are parts of the hands and the legs.
A bunch of tiny bones.
Okay, but they are not bones that are such that maintain the structure.
No, but they'd be Rodbinian
Counted as the road.
or Rodminian. So if
They
you
would be
take a
included
bunch
in
of
the extra
metatarsals,
number, the total number. of bones.
correct,
But
that's
they're not
Rodminian.
bones. That's why the Gemara says he counted those other two, because they maintain the
That's
primary
Rodbinian.
structure of the body. Okay? That's it. Shammai Omer, Shammai, however, says, Afilu etzem mina shidra, or mina gugolet. Even if you had, sorry, a small piece of bone
One,
from the
vertebrae.
spinal column, or from the skull. Okay? Why is that? Shani Shammai Amachmir. Why? Because I say I as Shammai am more stringent. Lifshot mina tama debate, right? Lifshot mina tama debate shama, demachmi. Okay, and on what basis do we say here to understand that Shammai is being more stringent here? Right? Hot Rabbanan. But what about the rabbi? Ad the Ika Shidra Vigu Goen. Okay, aren't we saying here that it still might be the language of both and the backbone, the final. No, Adkan, up to this point, Lo Pligi Rabbanan Alei, the Shammai Elaba Etzim Echad, the Ate Mina Shidra Umina Kuko. Up to this point, the rabbis are not arguing for the Shammai in terms of a single bone that comes from the spinal column or the skull. Okay? About Heicha the Iti Ve'enei, but where we're talking that it comes in its, I'm going to say, pure form in a sense, intact.
The complete shedra or the complete
Afilo Chada Minahon, even one of those. Okay? So again, if you have the art scroll, you can look at it. There's a long note there on 51B3, note number 25. Okay, so what happens? By Rami Bar Chama, he asked the following: Rova atzamos min hashidra v'dugolet. What if you have a majority of the bones from the skull and the spinal column? What's the situation? Kikatani, when we teach it. In other words, our Mishnah, Chatzi Kav Atzamo, when it gives that measurement of a quarter kav of our bones, Heche the Ika. What? Right. A Chatzi Kav, a half a kav of the bones. Heche the Ika Mishar Evarav, of our Min Shidra V'Gulgolet Techamiri. Okay, are we talking here that it's the other other bones, right? Right? Is that the situation? And therefore, that's where he's being stringent. Afilu rova atamot. Okay, even we've said when it's just the quarter, okay, of the bones. Odilma lo shana, or perhaps there's no difference. Right? What happens in Marava, Tashma. Listen to the following bright. Right? Hashidra B'Hagugolet. When we talk about it again, the backbone and the skull, the Isaka Da'ata, and if you're going to consider it, Rova Atzamot, the Ate Min Shidra V'Hagugolet, come here. And if you're going to consider then where you have a majority of the bones coming, I'm going to put in the word here, only in a sense, from the skull,
including
the backbone. Come here, that's being where we're being stringent.
that would be Shammai's community.
That would be Shammai's explanation. Litnei, let our Mishnah teach al rova atzamot haba min hashidra v'vulei. Okay, that it should teach those that amount
It should say it
and
specifically
specifically
that way.
spell it out in the language
And
of the
since
Mishnah.
it didn't, we can't.
Right. So therefore, what's going to happen when we pick up tomorrow on the Kimmel, okay, that we're going to cite the question, V'harava Huda Amar. But Rabbi himself says, Lo nitzracha el le'edrad v'golet she'ein b'hem ro'eh. We're going to pick up.
Because if you take the number of bones in a spinal column and the number of bones in a skull, it does not add up to a row. But it is a quarter of a cow, or which would be the combination.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, nuts.
Is the skull only one bone?
Thank you.
Them bones, them
Thank
drabos.
you, Ron.
Six, well, there's six in the shell of the